thought they were architects of your downfall, drafted every whisper like it was a blueprint, placed each deceit like a cornerstone. They believed that by dragging your name through the dirt, they could bury you beneath it. But they didn't realize something simple and fatal. Dirt is just the beginning of growth. While they plotted from shadows, they were feeding the very soil that would root your uprising. And now they're watching the very reality they crafted unfold. But not around you, around them. The traps they laid for you were built with mirrors, and those mirrors are cracking beneath their weight. You didn't become their downfall by fighting back. You did it by refusing to rot in the grave they dug for you. They underestimated the power of consequence, disguised as karma. Every lie they told about you now circles their life like a raven, picking at their comfort. What once was mockery is now paranoia. What was once betrayal is now a reflection. Psychology doesn't lie, it reflects. And they are being forced to see themselves for what they are, through the consequences they once wished upon you. People forget that thoughts create patterns. Intent carves out reality. The damage they dreamed for you, it's nesting in their house now, clawing at their sleep, whispering in their guilt-soaked minds. You didn't have to curse them. Their intentions did it for you. They wanted to see you fall, but not just fall, shatter. They orchestrated your humiliation like it was theater, thinking you were too naive, too soft, too unaware, but you were taking notes. And there is no vengeance more surgical than growth done in silence. You watched, you remembered, but you never chased. And that is what's killing them now. The version of you they wanted to destroy no longer exists. You became something else entirely. Something they can't touch, can't predict, can't outmaneuver. And in that evolution, the brutality began. Not by your hand, but by the collapse of the system they thought would break you. They're in the middle of a reckoning, one that wears their own fingerprints. The story flipped because you stopped participating in the drama. You didn't scream your innocence, you lived it. And in doing so, you revealed their guilt to the world without a single word. It's psychological whiplash. They can't fathom how their carefully constructed trap became a cage they can't escape. People often forget, energy doesn't vanish, it rebounds. And the energy they threw at you, the betrayal, the mockery, the fake alliances, it all found its way home. Now every mirror they pass reflects a villain they can't justify. You didn't have to destroy them, you simply let reality catch up. While they kept rewinding your pain in their minds for satisfaction, you were building momentum. That's what hits the hardest. You became the proof they were praying would never exist, the embodiment of everything they said was impossible for someone like you. And now that it's happening, their lives feel unfamiliar. Their own voices don't sound confident anymore. The arrogance? Shaken. The laughter? Quieted. The universe didn't forget your suffering. It stored it. And when the timing was divine, it released it as a mirror image in their direction. They can't sleep, not peacefully, not fully, because the very reality they plotted is now perched on their windowsill, watching, waiting, breathing down the back of their necks. It's brutal because it's accurate. It's poetic because it's earned. This isn't revenge, it's balance. A brutal, beautiful balancing of scales they thought would always tip in their favor. That's the part they can't swallow, that the universe didn't just take your side. It echoed your silence and turned it into judgment. And judgment doesn't scream. It simply arrives with no announcement and settles in the cracks they thought you'd never escape. You walk lighter now, not because the pain is gone, but because it's no longer yours to carry. It transferred. You handed it back without rage, and that's what burned them. You didn't become what they were, you became something they couldn't imitate, and that's true brutality. When the one you underestimated becomes the exact kind of proof your ego said couldn't exist. You didn't just outgrow them, you exposed them, and now, every step you take is a chapter in their internal unraveling. They made you their enemy, but all you did was survive long enough to become their mirror. They feel it now. The discomfort, the weight, the very intentions they launched are ricocheting through their choices, relationships, careers. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's the missed opportunity, the broken trust, the quiet friend who walks away without explanation. Life has a cold way of restoring order. You became their storm by becoming their absence. And now they're left with themselves, raw, unfiltered, and unprotected by your grace. You were their shield and their target. And the irony, they fired the shot that removed you. Now all that's left is the truth they pretended didn't exist. What's more terrifying than karma? A person who lets it speak for them. You don't raise your voice. You don't defend your name. You let time handle that. And time did not forget. It watched every insult, absorbed every act of sabotage, and stored every act of sabotage, and stored every false alliance. And when the time came, it dressed you in dignity and gave them what they gave. You didn't beg for justice. You became the reason justice arrived. And now they sit in rooms they used to control, haunted by the ghost of someone they thought was weak, who turned out to be their reckoning. This isn't the end for you. It's the origin point, the moment their plots became your fuel, the point where suffering became blueprint, where silence became strategy. You were never just the target. They helped forge a weapon they never imagined you'd wield. And now, the game is reversed. It's getting brutal, not because you've changed, but because they're finally feeling what they made you live through. The game was never about winning. It was about outlasting. And you did, quietly, brutally, brilliantly. They cast the spell with smirks, weaving words to cage your spirit, dangling illusions of power that they pretended were yours to claim, until they laughed at the curse they unleashed. They didn't see the consequences in the undertow of their jests. They only felt the bite of your silence and assumed it would fade. They believed spells are harmless illusions, laughter is the end, and curses are cheap theatrics. But they forgot that words, like seeds, take root beneath the dirt, and once they sprout, there's no pretending they were never planted. You let them laugh while photos were taken, and deals were sealed, and alliances were forged in the shadow of their mockery. That laughter echoed in empty rooms and carried the weight of 60-second victories. But they didn't know the echo would come back as a roar. You didn't need to shout. You just stayed. And now the spells they cast shape their reality. The curse they laughed at, it's not magic, it's poetry. Every act of sabotage, every whispered foul prayer has come home to haunt them. Their own words circle the skyline of their world, writing graffiti on every hallway of their consciousness. You didn't fight it. You listened, you cataloged, you let their energy retreat into their own bones. And now, every kiss they grant is cursed with their hands too dirty to savor joy. Every conversation comes with the weight of echoes they created. They can't escape the reflection of their own actions, because it's written in the texture of their days. The laughter they spilled is frozen on their lips. The jokes they cracked now echo in rooms never meant to exist. And the cruelest part, their reflection doesn't lie. You stand back from their collapse, not out of mercy, but clarity. You see them flipping through their own history like a hunter of ghosts, searching for the moment before the spiral. But you understand that the spiral wasn't given. It was built, piece by piece, curse by curse. Their downfall isn't a glitch, it's architecture. They wring their hands, trying to rewrite the endings, but their scripts fray, because a curse, whispered in entitlement, never ends with a whisper. It will bloom. And when it blooms, like it has now, every petal is sprinkled with their own delusion. You didn't need to curse them. They did it, and now their attempt to escape only tightens the noose of their own making. Look at them now, trying to scrub floors they stained, fumbling for forgiveness they refused to ask for, seeking redemption they refused to grant you. They cast that spell, and they laughed, but the curse took shape in you, and now it's living inside them, inside their relationships, their partnerships, their confidence, not the other way around. The seed they planted in your shadow flowered in their garden, and with every step they take, they step through petals sharpened by their own intent. They wanted to cage you. Instead, they locked themselves inside the sound of their own collapse. And while they're still scrounging for escape, you're walking free, untouched, unbroken, and absolute proof that curses don't just vanish. They transform. Now they flinch at silence. They can't stand stillness anymore, because stillness is where the echoes get loud. The same silence they mocked in you has become their tormentor. You remember how they used to grin in circles, casting judgment like salt over open wounds, confident that your stillness meant surrender. But you weren't still. You were studying, and now that same silence follows them. Only it doesn't protect. It prosecutes. It chases them through crowded rooms and quiet nights. They try to distract themselves with noise, with people, with movement, but no amount of company muffles the voice of a truth they buried alive. Their spell was never about magic. It was a contract. And now that contract has matured, and the debt is psychological. What you endured was not just betrayal, it was ritual. They thought they could offer your pain up like a sacrifice to whatever gods they worshipped. Ego, vanity, applause. They painted you as weak to polish their reflection. But spells are rituals too, and rituals invite consequence. You weren't just the scapegoat, you were the test. And when you passed, their illusion broke. They didn't believe in energy until it haunted them. They didn't believe in consequence until it slipped into their bedsheets and kissed their dreams into nightmares. Every gesture, every cruel word, every casual dismissal now walks behind them like a loyal beast, a beast of their own design. You never had to summon anything. They did that themselves. There's something poetic about someone being forced to watch the film of their own destruction, frame by frame, unable to pause or rewind. That's what they're living now, a reel of intentions they threw at you, now projected onto their own life. And the audience, those same people they tried to impress with your downfall, the crowd is watching and the applause has died. There's no glory in falling apart under your own weight, the legend in trying to run from reflections that scream truth. They called you cursed. But the real curse is being unable to escape what you've become. They see you now, not with envy, but with horror. Because you didn't return as the villain, you returned as the verdict. And isn't it amusing how the ones who claim to be untouchable are always the first to fall apart when their control collapses? They tried to curse your reputation, and now theirs is leaking at the seams. You didn't need revenge. Your healing was the punishment. Your evolution was the thunderclap that shattered their delusion. They fed off your silence and mistook it for weakness. But silence is not absence. It is power under pressure, and once it's released, it doesn't ask permission. It reshapes. Now every smile they forced looks plastic. Every story they tell sounds scripted. They didn't lose you. They lost the lie they lived in. They thought the reflection would always flatter them, that no matter how dark their deeds, the world would still see a polished image. But mirrors don't care for masks. They show what stands in front of them. No filters, no edits. And now, every mirror shows them a version they can't love. That's the curse. Not some lightning bolt from the sky, not some ghostly whisper in the dark. The curse is the moment they realize they are exactly who they pretended not to be, and every ounce of suffering they laughed at in you is now pulsing through the fabric of their own life. You didn't cast a spell. You survived one. And that survival wrote a new language, one they can't speak. So let them panic. Let them sweat under the weight of their own rituals. You don't need to gloat. The universe has already written the final paragraph, and your name doesn't appear where they expected. You rose, not to their level, but above it. And while they fumble with broken scripts and twisted mirrors, you've become the narrative they can't rewrite. They cast the spell, they laughed at the curse, and now every breath they take is a page from the aftermath. A reflection they cannot escape, a truth they cannot delete, a legacy they never imagined, forged by the very person they once tried to bury. You. They envisioned you drowning, barely breathing, in a life you didn't choose. Not because you failed, but because they wanted you to. They fantasized about your collapse like it was entertainment, replaying it in their minds as if suffering were a performance and they were the front row audience. But here's the twist. They didn't just wish ruin on you. They invested in it. They rehearsed it. They summoned it with every crooked conversation, every sideways glance, every word laced with venom wrapped in charm. And now, the portrait they painted for your demise has come to life, but not where they expected. That twisted image, that deformed future. They wake up to it every morning, blinking back the horror that what they wanted for you has taken up permanent residence inside them. They didn't curse you. They wrote a prophecy for themselves. The irony is too cruel to be accidental. They tailored their wishes with surgical cruelty. Let them feel abandoned, they said. Let them be invisible, insignificant, forgotten. But fate has a disturbing sense of humor. Because now when they walk into rooms, no one sees them. When they speak, no one listens. They became the echo of everything they designed for you. The same disconnection they prayed would infect your relationships now bleeds into theirs. The betrayal they conjured in their fantasies now stalks their lovers. Their circle shrinks, their spotlight dims, and their own reflection is a ghost of the confidence they once wore like armor. They orchestrated your silence, and now they can't bear the volume of their own thoughts. They hoped you would be swallowed by failure, not just lose, but become lost. A walking reminder of what happens when someone dares to dream too boldly. But the truth is, your resilience was never built for their comfort. You didn't scream when they pushed you into darkness. You adapted. You navigated that blackness with eyes wide open, and they mistook your silence for surrender. Now they pace their rooms like prisoners, suffocating in spaces they once ruled, because what they see in the mirror is the haunting of their own design. A life unraveling not by accident, but by blueprint. Their blueprint. They designed misfortune for you with such attention to detail, as if your ruin would nourish their pride, and it did, for a moment. They gloated when the cracks appeared when the storm broke over your head. They mistook weather for destiny, but you were not drowning. You were tempering, becoming steel beneath the waves they thought would shatter you. And now, those same waves pull them under. You didn't pray for their collapse, but you watched as nature returned balance to the imbalance they birthed. The misfortune they chanted for you, it now knocks at their door with no intention of leaving. Their reflection doesn't age gracefully. It decays with the knowledge that their curse was delivered home. They thought darkness was directional, that it could be thrown like a knife and never return. But darkness is circular. What you send comes back. What you bury resurfaces. They threw shadows at your light, and now they live under the weight of their own projection. The pity they hoped others would offer you now clings to them. But no one pities them. People watch quietly as they crumble. Because the collapse isn't loud. It's subtle. It's personal. It's psychological. They look at the mirror and see your former reflection. An image they once found amusing, but now it terrifies them because it doesn't blink. Now they whisper your name less like a joke and more like a warning. Your presence used to fuel their superiority. Now it reminds them what they've become. The karma isn't theatrical. It's slow. It moves like fog, unseen, unchallenged, and inescapable. Every corner of their life now reflects the pain they prepped for you. They lost the plot. They don't know when things started to turn. But you do. You remember the exact moment they laughed when you were low. And now you walk with the stillness of someone who saw justice unfold without lifting a hand. You don't need revenge. You've outgrown the theater of retribution, but life. Life has a taste for poetic balance, and now their desires, those distorted dreams they painted with your name, are looping endlessly within their own narrative. What once was malice is now memory. What once was confidence is now confusion. They stare at the mirror, wondering why their face looks unfamiliar. It's because the reflection doesn't just show features anymore. It shows decay, a slow erosion of character born from intentions they thought would never resurface. But energy doesn't die. It mutates. And now, it lives in their eyes. Their downfall doesn't wear your face, that would be too generous. No, their downfall wears their own face, only older, hollower, and heavier with regret. Every line on their skin tells a story they thought you'd carry, but you dropped that weight long ago. Now they stagger under it. What was meant for you refuses to leave them. And that's the most brutal form of poetic justice, when the pain doesn't visit them in one explosive blow, but lingers, grows roots, wraps around their ambitions, and strangles every step forward. They hoped you'd break. Instead, they shattered, alone. There's a lesson tucked into the folds of their misery, a truth they can't unsee, that when you direct suffering at another, you offer the world a contract. And if the world sees that the recipient doesn't sign it, the signature defaults back to the sender. You never picked up the weapon they carved for you. You walked past it, and now it slices through their days, over and over. That's what makes your peace so violent to them. It's clean, it's whole, it's undeserved in their eyes, because they didn't believe people like you were allowed to win. But you didn't win by chance. You won by endurance. They spun those lies like silk ribbons, soft, seductive, and tangled. They told anyone who'd listen about your downfall, that you cracked under pressure, that your dreams were illusions, that your failures were proof of your foolishness. They painted your life in half-truths, crafting cartoons of your pain to entertain themselves. They paraded those stories to feel secure in their own fragile empires. They believed illusion was power. But now those lies have grown into fungal roots that choke their own foundation, because lies don't stay where you place them. They bleed, they infect. You didn't need to destroy the narrative. They built a cage of rhetoric, and the bars snapped back and trapped them inside. Remember how they laughed when gossip became gospel? How they treated your missteps as milestones of prophecy? They curated evidence that you were losing until they believed it themselves. They stalked every room with their scripts, expecting those words to define you forever. But what they didn't anticipate was that reality has its own rhythm, a beat that trumps stories. Your rise was too loud for their whispers, too undeniable for their feeble illusions. Now, their lies echo in empty rooms, hitting walls like hollow promises. They wake up haunted by headlines, by screenshots, by envelopes they sealed with fingerprints they thought unseen. Every step forward you take reminds them that their truth was just a mask, and masks slip. Their crafted narrative was the weapon they used to bury you. But bad lies are brittle. They break under pressure. They pretend their version of the story is still circulating, but everyone's eyes drift elsewhere. You moved in silence, gathered your fragments, then rose like a ghost in daylight. They can't erase what never died. Their truth is suffocating now, covering their vision, strangling their relationships, contaminating their own self-image. They don't just see the real you, they see themselves, liars, spectators, accomplices. The confession is in their eyes, a silent gasp that comes when you walk into a room they tried to control. The lies they told to protect themselves now echo back at them like gavel strikes. The tragedy of lies is that they demand upkeep, a life of performance, revision, repetition. You should see them now, scrambling through their days, chasing new narratives to patch the holes. But the holes have grown too wide. They're swimming in the oceans they created and can't see land anymore. You didn't have to confront them. You didn't have to symbolically rip the mask off. All you did was keep living, keep building, keep rising. And their narrative couldn't keep pace. Their lies are no longer your downward spiral. They're the gravity dragging them down. And here's the sweet irony. The lies they told to elevate themselves, to feel smarter, stronger, superior, are now the cornerstone of their collapse. They thought defamation by association protected them. They thought your reputation would crumble into dust and they'd build their towers on the wreckage. But now the opposite happened. Their towers are built on lies, weak, fragile, unworthy of altitude. And every time they stumble, remember, they laid the bricks themselves. The laughter they shared with others as they spread those lies now echoes back as the hollow sound of their own demise. In their cages of fiction, they're suffocating on the breath of their own creation.